The Animator is a powerful interface that allows us to set up states of our animations and the transitions between them. In this video, we'll use the Animator to set up the animations of our targets. Our objectives are to explore the Animator's interface to get a better understanding of how it works, set up the entry animation state for our target, set up the transitions between animation states, and trigger an animation transition through code. Okay, let's go ahead and select the target-positive game object. And notice over in the inspector, we have an Animator component attached. The Animator is what assigns animations to our game object. The Animator component requires an Animator controller, and you can see that right here. It's called target-positive1, and this was created and linked in automatically when we created our animation clips. Let's go ahead and rename that. So if I click on it, it highlights it over in the project view. So let me tap on that and rename this. We'll call it Target Animator Controller, just to make it a little clearer what that actually is and not just have the same name as our prefab or our game object. And let's go ahead and open the Animator controller. So this brings up the Animator interface over here in this tab. With the Option or Alt key pressed on your keyboard, you can press the left mouse button to essentially pan around this view. And what we have here is we have the various animation clips that were created. So you can see there's target idle, target spawn, and target exit. And these basically represent the possible states in our animator or in our animation. Over here you can see two properties. One is the entry property and the other is the entry state property. And you can see there's a line from entry to target idle. Basically what this means is when the animation starts, it will play the target idle animation. I think that was set up because this was the first animation clip that we created, so it picked that as the default. We don't actually want target idle to be our default because when the target enters the world, we want it to play the target spawn animation. So we can make this change by right-clicking on the entry node and choosing Set State Machine Default State. So this will change the default state from target idle to the state that we select. So if I choose this, notice I have a live link now on my mouse, and if I move it up to target spawner and then click, notice it moved that transition from the target idle to the target spawner. And you could drag these states around however you see fit for whatever visual layout. So I'll go ahead and move this down and then move the target idle up and then the target exit. So from entry, I'm going to play the target spawner. Once the target spawner is done, I want to move to target idle so we can make a transition, very similar to what we just did. So let me right click on target spawner and choose make transition. And I've got a live link, so let me drag up to target idle to set that transition. Now if I click on the transition, the inspector updates and it shows me a variety of things. Essentially it's telling me that the transition is going to go from the target spawner state to the target idle state. Has exit time is checked. Basically, when the target spawner is done, it will move on to the target idle state. This clip does not loop, as an example. And this shows me sort of the transition that's going to happen between the target spawner and the target idle. So you can see there's a fair amount of overlap where the transition starts and the transition stops. So you can actually live drag these to reduce the transition, or you can open up settings and specify the transition duration. So I'm going to make the transition very small. So let me go ahead and play. One nice thing about the Animator is you can actually preview the animation as it happens. So I'm looking at my target-positive1 game object out here. It has that Animator controller attached. So if I play, I could actually view this. And you can see visually it was pretty quick, but it showed a little progress bar on target spawner, and then it immediately moved up to the target idle, which is exactly what I want to have happen. And then eventually the game object was destroyed, so that's why it stopped playing. So we have one more transition that we want to have happen between target idle and target exit. So what is actually going to make this transition happen? Like I said, target idle we want to continue to play while the target is out in the world, but once the target is going to be destroyed, we want to play the animation before it's destroyed. We actually already attached a script to the target called target exit. So let's go to the game object and look at that target exit script. Let me go ahead and double click on it. We haven't really done a code walkthrough of this yet, so let's go ahead and do that. You can see we have a couple public floats at the top. One specifying an exit after seconds time, a number of seconds before we want to exit, and then an exit animation speed. We have an internal or a private variable. Notice we could actually specify private here. If we don't specify public, then it's just assumed to be private. So a start destroy is false initially, and then another private float called target time. So on start, we initialize target time. So we basically set the target time to the current time. This is how we get the current time, plus the exit after seconds value. So in this case, it'd be 10 seconds, or we can override that in the editor, of course. So after the current time plus 10 seconds, that's going to be our target time. Then we go down into the update loop. So this runs over and over continually. So every time through, we check the current time and see if it's greater than equal to the target time. If it is greater than equal to the target time, then we check to see if this game object has an animator component attached. And if it doesn't, meaning is this statement equivalent to null, then we just destroy the game object directly because there's no animator, so we can just destroy it. And that's the way that the targets have been. But now that this target actually has an animator component, we actually want to play the animation before destroying. So that's what the next bit of code does. First, it checks to see if we've started to destroy or not. Once again, this was an internal variable, private bool that was initially set to false. So the first time this would evaluate to true. So if not start destroy, then it's going to go in here and immediately set that start destroy to true. So the code here will only run once. So next time through the loop, of course, this will evaluate to false and it won't run this code again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to trigger the animator to make that exit transition. So this is sort of where the magic happens. We get a reference to the animator component on this game object, and we call this method on the animator called setTrigger, and we pass the value exit. Of course, at any time you could select something like this, and you could do the command single quote or under help, select Unity API reference. And this will bring up the reference. Of course, we're talking about the animator, so I can click on that, and we can read the description of how this works. But I'm just going to go ahead and jump back into MonoDevelop and describe it. So we pass that trigger to the animator, and then we want the animator to basically trigger based on what is passed in. After that happens, we invoke a function call after a certain number of seconds. So basically, we want the animation to play. Then after a certain number of seconds, as specified here, I believe it's 1 second, defined, it's going to call the kill to target function down below. So basically, once the animation plays, we're going to destroy the game object by calling kill target. Okay, so we need to set up our animator to receive this exit trigger. So let's go back to Unity and set that up. So up here at the top of the animator, notice we've got layers view and we've got parameters view. So we want to be in parameters, and we need to create a parameter for that exit. So let me go ahead and click the plus, and notice you can create different types of variables, a float, an int, a bool, or a trigger. For purpose of example, we're going to use a trigger. It's probably the simplest. Bools could be true or false, and of course floats or ints can be various numbers. So let's go ahead and set the trigger up. It creates a new trigger. We're going to name it exit, because that's the string that we're actually passing from that script. So we've got that parameter created. Now we can create a transition from target idle to target exit. So let me go ahead and right click again on this state and say make transition. So from target idle, we'll go to target exit, create that transition. Let me then select that transition, and I can uncheck has exit time because I want target idle to continually play over and over again and only make the transition once the condition is applied. So notice down here it said transitions need at least one condition or an exit time to be valid. So let's go ahead and create the condition here. So let me hit plus, and notice that the condition popped right in there. If we had multiple of these, we can click the down arrow, then select the appropriate condition. If it was something like a Boolean, you can set that here and then set, if it's true, do the transition. If it's false, do the transition or whatnot. But we're just using a trigger, which is very simple. Once again, we actually have the sort of the timeline of the transition. Notice it's a fairly big transition, almost the whole duration of the target exit animation. So we want to reduce this time. So let me go ahead and drag this down to be a very minimal amount of time. And then let's go ahead and preview this once again. So let me hit play. And let's watch it. So we did the spawn, We're in target idle. I think this is going to play for about 10 seconds. And then that target exit will call, and there it goes. It called the target exit animation, and the target left the world. So let's go ahead and stop. So now that we have that animator all set up on the target positive game object, let's go ahead and apply that to the prefab, because remember this is built out of a prefab, but we've been doing changes locally on this game object. So if I click apply, this will apply back to that target positive 1 prefab. But remember, we have multiple targets now. We have the positive 1, positive 2, negative, and bonus. So there's no easy way to sort of click a button and have that apply to all of those other prefabs, since they are separate prefabs at this point. But what I can do is I could actually copy this component. So let me go to the animator and click on the little gear, go down and select copy component. Then let me go to the other prefab. So let me go to the target positive 2 prefab, and let's go down, and just on any of the components we can click the gear and choose paste component as new. And this animation is going to work just as well on this prefab as it did on the other prefab, because it's just modifying the scale. So this animator is sort of a universal animator that I can apply to any of these prefabs. So let's go to the target negative and do the same thing. Paste component is new. And let's go to target bonus, and once again, paste component is new. So they all have that animator controller. And finally, let's go back to the hierarchy, and let's remove this target that I put out into the world, since we really want all the targets to be created through the spawner. So let me Command or Control Delete. Let's move to the scene view. So let's go ahead and play our game, but let me go ahead and maximize on play so we can get a really good view of the world. And play. So as I'm playing, you can see that the objects or the targets are animating in, and if I don't shoot them in time, of course, they will animate out of the world as well. So we have that sort of nice visual polish on all the targets. I'll hit some negative targets here. And, of course, this is Box Shooter. In the next video, we'll finish up the project.